Hi, my name is Marielle Reussink. I'm the founder of the M's. We are a company that specializes in working with startups, entrepreneurs, as well as small to medium-sized businesses all over the world, helping them achieve their goals through branding, websites, as well as campaigns that actually work. And one of the things that we've really enjoyed doing over the past year is actually helping our clients be successful at LinkedIn. But what is success? That is a really good question. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how you can go through your performance on LinkedIn or any other social media channel to assess what's working and what's not, and make decisions of do more of the stuff that works and do less of the stuff that doesn't. Okay. So right now you should be able to see my screen. I'm looking at a page. So when you land on your LinkedIn page, the first thing you want to do is actually head over to the analytics section, which I'm going to open now. So you can see we've got a bunch of tabs there. We'll have a quick look just now at what we've got there. But I think the first thing to notice is that we can change the date range. And here you have some presets from LinkedIn, or you can custom choose which one you would like to look at. For today, we're just going to look at the last 90 days. It gives you a quick overview of your highlights, of your impressions. It gives you a quick snapshot of your content. You can export all of this data, and that actually applies for all of the data that you've got in LinkedIn. And I will show you what that data looks like in a minute. Before I do that, I just want to show you the tabs that we've got here. So under the visitors tab, you can really just focus on what's happening with the visitors that are coming to your page. The same applies to followers. If you've got lead campaigns, that would be showing up here. And then LinkedIn also has quite a nice feature in terms of competitors. So you can choose your own competitors that you want to rank against. You can add them here and you can see how you are performing against those competitors. So for example, this page is currently ranked number 2 in terms of total engagement. So that gives us a really nice metric to kind of see how we're performing over time, benchmarking versus competitors as well. So I mentioned that I already pulled this data, and I've actually already pre-edited a little bit as well. So what I'm going to do now, like I said, when you hit export, you extract a lot of data from LinkedIn. I've already started cleaning up my spreadsheet a little bit. You get 2 tabs actually. One is metrics. So this gives you the metrics per day, and the other one gives you the metrics per post. So what we're going to do is we're actually not going to look at it per day. We are actually going to look at it per post, because I'm more interested to know what is actually working in terms of the content that is presented on this page. And if we look at the spreadsheet, there's quite a bit going on. So I'll just quickly take you through it. So first of all, in the first column, you'll be able to see the copy of the post. Then you'll be able to see the post link, so you can easily navigate towards it. You can see whether it was organic or paid, when it was posted, who the audience was, what the impressions were. It'll also go into video metrics, clicks, the click-through rate, likes, comments, reposts. And then I've added for myself a column called total engagements or interactions, which essentially sums up these 4 columns per post. And then we've got the engagement rate. You will also see that I've highlighted some of the columns for myself. I've done that to just make it very easy for me to visually process this relatively, bigger spreadsheet. So the metrics that I'm really interested in are the impressions over this time period, the click-through rate, the average click-through rate over this time period from the content, the total engagements, and the engagement rate, the average engagement rate. So if you scroll down, you'll see I've already prepared this, and I've added a total column just for myself to see what is the total picture of how this content is performing. Now that I know what is the total picture, I can go into my previous report, which should have the same timeline. So we pulled 90 days, so it should also have 90 days. And I can compare those results. I can see, have we been better in impressions? Have we reached more people or less? Have we had a better click-through rate? Have we had a higher engagement rate? And then those will already give me insights to understand and learn, okay, was this a more successful or less successful period? And then I can go a level further and try to understand why. So performance is always driven by content, right? So if I now want to understand why this was a better period, I'll go in and actually add a filter to filter my results to find the best posts in terms of performance. First of all, by reach, so impressions, right? Because I want to know which posts got the most organic reach, and then I want to understand why. And then the next one I will also filter by is the engagement rate. So that's the proportional performance of engagement versus reach. And that is going to give me a different insight, namely whether, like, sometimes you have content that has very high reach. Sometimes you have content that has high reach and a high engagement rate, or you could have a post that has a high engagement rate, but actually didn't reach that as many people as, posts that had a very high reach. So there are some nuances there to understand. So those would be some filters that I implement to understand the quality of the content and to understand what resonated and what didn't. So having looked at this data, I've already pulled out what were our top content pieces, and I want to share those with you now so that we understand what made those pieces successful. I've reviewed my top content in terms of both reach as well as the engagement rate, because there might be some nuances there. Like, just because a post had very high reach but low engagement, it just means that it had a different positive outcome. So for that reason, we look at both. So I'm going to look at the top 5 content pieces that came out of our analysis, and we're going to look at what made those content pieces successful on LinkedIn. So the first post is actually an arrangement of lots of different images that we're taking at an event. And this is actually a good insight from LinkedIn. LinkedIn loves people. LinkedIn also really loves to showcase what happens inside a company. And content that typically showcases these type of events tend to perform very nicely for companies on LinkedIn. Now, when we think of format is really, really important for LinkedIn. So on the one hand, we could obviously think about, okay, do we do a video with all of the images that we took at the event? Do we do a carousel? Or do we just share one really strong image? How do we present this, right? So one of the findings, actually from this report and also, or from, this page and also from other work, is if we share a series of images from an event, it actually tends to perform much better for the client, helping them achieve their goals. So this was their top performing post. Now what I want to show you is the next best post from this time. And what you can immediately see is that it's, again, a whole collection of images, right? Again, presenting sort of a snapshot from this event that was attended here by the company. So this might already give us an insight, right, in terms of what works and what doesn't work for a specific company and a specific audience. So just for your context, of course, within creating content for this page, lots of different formats have been used. So there are videos, there are images, there are collections of images, there are graphics, etc. So reviewing the results, it's really interesting to see that already two of the top posts are actually have the same visual format. So that's a really interesting insight while we work through this and try to learn what is really working for this page. So the next really great post for this business was actually this very simple image. It showcases a group of students with, one of the team members and, a university activity that the company organized. What the key takeaway is, looking at this post and comparing it with the other two posts that we looked at, is we can see people. So clearly, images or collections of images that highlight people work very well on LinkedIn and work very well for this company and their audience. So seeing that top 3 of the posts that we've already looked at that were top performing all featured people gives us a really good insight that is probably something we should be doing more of. So having looked at some of the top content pieces now, it might be really easy to now deduce, okay, for this company, all that works is featuring the culture, featuring the team, featuring people, and just, creating that type of content. And one could easily feel, okay, we need to pivot our strategy completely and just do that. So beyond looking at the top 3 or even top 5 in terms of both impressions and the engagement rate, What I think is also quite important is actually going further, say going into the top 10 or even top 15, depending on the volume of content you're looking at in a period, to make sure to really validate that insight. Because what we then found is if we go a little bit further down, we have different types of content that are from different arcs and that have different formats that still do pretty well for the companies. So sure, they were not part of the top 3 in either of those categories, but they still perform really well. So one of the formats that performs really well here is actually carousels. And you can see this is actually quite a large frame for a carousel. It's not the square format, not the 1x1. It's a larger frame. So it's taking up much more real estate. And this is something interesting that we've actually found recently, really being very sure of the format that you want to use for your LinkedIn creative has the ability to actually lift your results, because by choosing greater screen sizes, you actually take up more real estate on the interface. And that, of course, really pops on mobile, but it also really has the potential to pop or let your content pop on desktop as well. And in terms of that, of course, testing is always really, really important. So definitely test it out for yourself and for your audience. But make sure that you research also what those sizings are. So some of the greatest mistakes that I actually currently see on LinkedIn is using the wrong sizing. So sometimes there could be a tendency to repurpose Instagram content, for example, and using that sizing of a reel on LinkedIn. But then actually what happens is that your post doesn't appear taking up all of that real estate. Rather, it gets sort of squeezed to fit within the sizing of LinkedIn. So this would be really a top tip for you to consider, is reconsider the sizing that you're using on your carousels, on your videos, potentially even your static images. Try to maximize the real estate that your creative takes up on the screen. And keep it clean, keep it really nicely branded, but keep it clean, like low text, but really high impactful fonts. And something that really grabs people's attention. So working with color pops, can be really impactful. So this carousel is a very nice example of that. So it's delivering very nice snippets of content that have a lot of value, but it's delivered in such a way that if somebody were just to read the headline, they would already get the point. If they want to, really spend more time on this content, they can read more about it, or they could easily just click through all the pages and just very quickly have a grasp of what this content is about. And because of the sizing that this was presented in, it's more likely to pop in people's feed. So that was a very nice insight from this carousel, and a great learning that we can take forward into future content as well. Now I want to share with you some examples from other companies and thought leaders that I follow personally on LinkedIn, just highlighting some posts that I thought were really impactful, and I'm just going to share what makes them great. So we've just now looked at a carousel. Here we have another carousel, and you can see it's again using that idea of really using up all of the screen real estate. And it's also playing with a really strong color, right? You can see that's a really bright, beautiful sort of orangey red. It's definitely going to stand out on the feed, in the feed. And what makes this so powerful as well is how the strategic use of fonts, right? We've got a really impactful headline that we can see. It's really easy to read immediately. You can see if that's relevant to you or not. The person's also included sort of their name, so that personal branding pulls through as well. And then if, this grabs your attention, right, first by the color, but then also by the content that is presented, you're likely to click through and actually look at what is this document or this carousel about. And why this is also another great example is because this carousel is very clean. It combines the idea of presenting really impactful information in a very clean and concise way that's easy to read and easy to digest. So a lot of the carousel content that I sometimes see is very heavy, because people try to bring in a lot of text into that creative, because it is a creative where you could have much, much more text, right? It is literally a PDF that you upload that could have a lot of content. But because we need to remember that people are on social media and they are content snacking, the best way actually to leverage the carousel format is to still keep your content, your actual text, keep it tight, keep it concise, deliver value in a really high impactful way that is easy for people to go through quickly and remember, right? So if we click through this, we can see it's well branded. It's really clearly formatted. It's really easy to read. It's got some highlighted sort of sections in between to, again, give my mind an opportunity to kind of stop, think about it, and then get into the next segment. And I mean, this piece of content is about strategy. So it's quite an in-depth piece of content. I mean, this has 26 pages or so. So it will be, a bit of work for people to get through this. But because it's presented in such a nice way, people will enjoy that piece of content and find it very valuable to go through as well. So this is a really great takeaway to think about for your carousels, how to present them. So another thing that we've been seeing a lot on LinkedIn recently is brands doing unexpected things. So I think typically LinkedIn is kind of seen as the B2B channel, right? It's there for B2B things. So we've seen examples of brands breaking that mold and rethinking, what do we use LinkedIn for? Is it really just to share the B2B side of a company? Or can we actually also use it just to share our normal content that we would share in general with our audiences? And I actually feel some fashion companies have really embraced this and are doing this very well. And they're actually doing it through video format. So Louis Vuitton is a company like that I really enjoy following. They present really stunning videos on the LinkedIn feed, and it always does get my attention because of the format that they're using, right? Again, they're using this quite considerable size to present their videos, so it really takes up that real estate. But also it's something surprising. It's not something you would actually expect to necessarily see on LinkedIn. So it kind of breaks up the feed, and it does really, I think, have impact in an unexpected way. So yeah, Louis Vuitton is one of those companies that is doing that. But other, fashion companies are doing it as well. And, yeah, I think that's really an interesting learning for companies across categories, really, to maybe consider LinkedIn as a channel, which they might not be doing right now. So I think a lot of B2C companies tend to think of, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc., being really successful there. And that's great. But is there a moment where we can actually think about LinkedIn and how we can have an impact there, through our content as well, by presenting things that people might not actually necessarily expect on that medium, on that platform. So I think that's a really great example to consider as well. Yeah, let's look at the video. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go say. So this was from Louis Vuitton's Christmas campaign. What I like about it is, and this is why we actually work B2C and B2B, sometimes you can borrow ideas and kind of twist them, flip them into something unexpected, right? Something you wouldn't really think of usually, right? Like I would not have really thought about Louis Vuitton or any fashion brand going onto LinkedIn and sharing a video of their latest fashion show, right? Like per se, it's not the place for this, right? But I think, yeah, not the audience, right? But I just noticed over time, like every time I see these videos, they really do make me stop and look and consider it and just see, well, what is this about? So if I'm doing that, I'm sure other people are doing that. I mean, I'm not even that much of a fan of Louis Vuitton, but like I really enjoy seeing it in my feed. So I think it's about doing those unexpected things now on LinkedIn to kind of grab people's attention as well. And I mean, you can see it's like got really high production value, right? Like the clip. Oh, maybe you didn't see the clip, but when I send it, you'll see. Yeah. So when you'll see it has really high production value. Like it's like what you would expect to see, from the B2C channels, and we're commercial. So it's really, yeah, something that you don't think you'll see here. And I think that's why it works. So the example I'm going to share now is from the World Economic Forum. It's something that I tend to follow. And they do share a lot of video content, but also image content. And it's always enormously recognizable. Whenever anything pops into my feed from this organization, I know exactly, oh, this is going to be from the World Economic Forum. And I'm very likely going to be interested in what this video is about. And the way they achieve this is by always using exactly the same styling for every single video, right? So or even some of the creatives. So if we look at this, we've got obviously the logo there. We've got sort of a landscape to start introducing the video. And then it starts with a text that is quick and easy to read. And then that blue line. And this kind of styling carries through the entire video. And every single video is like that. And I just think it's so simple, but it's so effective just because it creates that very obvious styling and brand recognition with people, which then could really help your content to perform better, right? So it's that brand consistency, which I think we all know we need to have. But I think the reason I like this example is because it's so simple, right? I think we often think that we sometimes overthink things. We think creative has to be enormously complicated. So I think this is a great example of really effective branding that's to the point, enormously recognizable, and actually easy to achieve. So we've looked at a lot of things today for LinkedIn. I want to just summarize what are our core learnings from what we've looked at today. Number one, consider your format, right? I think it's really easy to just go into content creation and always do the same, right? We know 1x1 is a really effective format, or, we're producing a lot of content, for example, also reels and stories, etc., for Instagram and Facebook. And I think it's really easy to just go and repurpose that across channels. But if my number one recommendation for 2024 would probably be for LinkedIn, go back, look at the size options for LinkedIn Creative, look at what gives you the most real estate in the feed on desktop and mobile, and try out bigger formats for your content and see if that has a positive impact on lifting your results. So that would be a top tip to try. The other thing that really stands out, hopefully, from what we've looked at today is graphic elements for LinkedIn, right? So being really clean, being very clear in the branding, not too heavy on text, but having a very good visual with some text that's very easy to read with a strong font, working with color, to really lift your content in the feed. Those are all core ideas to work with to try and create really impactful creative for LinkedIn. Then think about your type of content, right? Think about our learnings that the algorithm on LinkedIn really seems to prefer people, right? And people's stories and stories from inside organizations or stories from people attending events, and try to think about how can you work that into your content. So of course, it's not about being repetitive and just doing 99% the same type of content and just, focusing on the internal environment of the organization. That's not where we want to go with this. But think about how can you take that learning and maybe repackage what you're doing. For example, if you're doing a thought leadership piece, would it make sense to present that from a person, as their advice or their insights rather than just a company writing a blog, for example? So those are the kind of insights that we can play with in terms of type of content. And then finally, try to rethink about LinkedIn as a channel for your organization. If you're in B2C, think about whether that is maybe a channel to explore and experiment with, because on LinkedIn, there is a space for the unexpected to really lift in the feed of people, because they're not overwhelmed by that type of content. And, engage audiences in a very different way that you might not be engaging them on other channels. And if you're already on LinkedIn, think about how can you introduce the unexpected, because it's of course also a very busy channel. There's a lot of the same stuff going on. So how can you create content that people would not necessarily think of being on LinkedIn, and see if that is effective for you as well. So those would be my top 4 tips to try for LinkedIn this year.